The second lesson plan that I taught was the inquiry-based lesson. I taught this at home to a group of 12th grade students in a Gov class. So since my original lesson plan was pretty much 12 days long, I had to shorten that down. So I shortened that down to a 30-minute lesson plan, so the lesson plan changed quite a bit. So originally the lesson plan was kind of based on what should your government do for you, and the second, and that kind of consisted more of figuring out, completing an essay and presenting to the class and kind of going through a bunch more research. And since I had such a limited time with fewer students, we actually changed the lesson to have government expectations. It was still revolved around what should your government do for you, and we looked at the Constitution's preamble and then changed it and altered it so that it could be more improved upon for students, so what they believed would be best for it. So I taught at my high school in Lincolnshire, Illinois. It's in northern Chicago, and this was something that I had taught in my Gov class with my Gov teacher. The first 2 days I observed, or the first day I observed two different class periods. What was interesting to me was that they were doing a free response question for a unit test, and the classroom is more collaborative. So each student had a different question, but it was related around the same general topic. Their topic was around Article 2 of the Constitution, and each question was different. And students collaborated together to try and get the answer. They could use notes. It was open technology, open teacher. They used me as a student teacher also to help. So it was interesting to see them go. When I was a student and did this experience, I kind of viewed it more as like it was easy. I was getting help from my peers, from my notes, from my teacher. It was kind of an easy experience for me. And now that I viewed it as a teacher, it was very problem-based learning. It was like a lesson plan that was basically, or collaborative learning, which was basically the students are presented with a question, they collaborate to find the answer, and then their assessment of their knowledge is the actual test. So that was really interesting for me to see it as a different standpoint. Technology was used a lot in that class. It was, when I was observing, they used it as finding their notes. They actually, all of their lessons for each day are on one website, Haiku, where they could find every single lesson, all the information, all of their links, so they use that. And then because my lesson plan was much shorter, it was used to kind of, I showed the preamble and then we used technology to alter the preamble. So that was kind of how we did that. If the whole lesson plan was taught, it's used for research, it's used to record themselves, to write a letter, so that's used a lot more in the actual lesson plan. Technology can always be improved upon this lesson. Like I said, the 30 minutes kind of constricted me in what I could do with technology and with the students while still actually doing an activity with them. The 12-day lesson plan is more of a lot of technology integration with research and finding out what they can do and typing things up and going through the thinking process of it. In the actual lesson, I think it would be nicer if every student had their own handheld version of it on their own iPads, because we are a one-to-one school. Students all have that. It's just not really feasible in the time frame that I had. This definitely changed how I'm going to use technology in my classroom, just due to the fact of having to alter how lessons work based on timing, students. Luckily, like my high school is one-to-one, but a classroom or school that may not have that one-to-one ratio has to vary in how I'm using technology. So if I'm teaching at my high school, I'm not really worried about being able to have technology, but at another high school, having technology as something that all the students can participate in is not something that is guaranteed. So that would make me have to look more into how can technology that I use personally in my classroom help all the students in the classroom. So it's just kind of different based on how the actual high school was. It was really interesting for me to see how much technology is or isn't used. For example, when I was in the classroom observing, having them use technology, like some of them used it for their free response question to look at their notes. Some students didn't even use their technology at all and just were collaborative or asked the teacher, asked me. So it was interesting to see that some students relied so heavily on technology, whereas other students didn't even use it at all in the classroom, even given the opportunity to use it. So it was interesting to see how each student varied with that, and how I can, and because the notes are online, how I can use that as a platform for students to really all have the same opportunity to use the same materials. So I thought it was a really interesting experience altogether. I loved observing the classroom, and I really loved being able to teach, even if it was a short time period. So I'm really excited to use all of the technology that I used in the classroom into my own classroom.